Mike Mayock's calling in right now, huh?
He's early.
Oh, I love
He's a
this.
punctual person.
This is like Tom Coughlin. Right, Mike Mayock? If you're 5 minutes early, you're on
Boston
time.
College.
You there, Mike?
Yeah, no, I'm here. I thought it was 11:20, right?
This is good. I mean, you're all good. Maybe I'm off, Mike. I don't know. I'm just draft day. My face is in these phone book type guides that we get from NFL Network Research. I'm just locked in. How are you doing?
Aside from bowling a pitch at Wrigley, I'm good.
Yeah. Now I heard about this. Did you dirt it? Did you put it in the dirt in Wrigley Tuesday night, Mike?
I don't think I got within 15 feet of the catch.
Now, before we get to who the catcher was, because that's a neat story, did you ask for, I heard this too, Mike, you asked for a second first pitch? You asked to do that?
No, I demanded it.
You know that's a violation of the first pitch code, right, Mike? You aware of that?
I don't care. I was so freaking embarrassed. I said, give it back to me. And of course, I have 4 younger brothers that have already basically sent me the same text message, which was, saw the video. Nobody's going to freaking care that you got a torn rotator cuff. Man up. You bounced it in the dirt. You're going to take a ton of abuse, and we're going to be first in line. That's basically what four brothers all said. And
I think you were a heavy-legged waist thrower there, Mike. You know, the ankle flexion was a little off. But it's okay. It's okay. You know, I mean, you're still Mike Mayock. You're still going to be the man tonight. Now, tell a story about who the catcher was. This is pretty neat stuff.
So there's an outfielder for the Chicago Cubs by the name of Matt Caesar. And the Cubs paid him a bunch of money several years ago because he was a football player at Villanova. And I kind of counseled him and his parents on whether or not where he would go in the NFL draft. And the reason I counseled them is because Matt Caesar was a teammate of my son Michael at Villanova and could not have been a nicer kid and a mentor to my son. So my son and he have a relationship, and when he found out that I was going to be throwing out the first pitch, he volunteered to Joe Madden, let me catch him, which I thought was cool. And then when I told Joe Madden in his office before the game that Michael and Matt were college football teammates, he looked at Kurt Warner and he said, well, Kurt, let's get you a football and you can throw a pass to Matt Caesar. So I got to throw a baseball pitch in the dirt to him, and then Kurt threw a slant, and Matt Caesar spiked it. I mean, I told Matt later, can you imagine you just caught a pass from Kurt Warner in Wrigley Field and got to spike it? You're the only guy that will ever be able to say that.
That's true. So Joe Madden was orchestrating the first pitch ceremony, essentially? Is that what you're saying?
He was awesome. We were in his office chatting, just the three of us. And when I told him the story, he looked right at Kurt, and he's like, Kurt, why would you want to throw a baseball? This is awesome. We'll get you a football, and you could throw a pass to Matt. And so Kurt was all in because he's much more comfortable holding a football. I mean, it was really funny.
So there was a football lying around Wrigley Field that they just found? Is that how?
5 minutes later, Kurt was holding the football with a big smile on his face. I mean, it was
fantastic. Awesome. That's fantastic. Yeah. Mike Mayock joining us here on the Rich Eisen Show. And tonight's the big night. Last night was your only mock draft, which is fantastic. You get to only do one of them. And you went Goff Wentz, obviously. And then number 3 overall, the Chargers. You had them going offensive line, but not Laramie Tunsil, Ronnie Stanley. Number 3 overall. Why? What's your thinking behind that, Mike?
It's twofold. First and foremost, they need to get a run game going a little bit. And remember, they drafted Melvin Gordon in the first round last year. And he didn't play well. He fumbled. They got no movement for him. Ronnie Stanley's a better run game left tackle than Tunsil. Secondly, Ronnie Stanley's in the conversation with Tunsil as the best pass blocking left tackle. I mean, Tunsil's a little bit better, but Stanley's right there. Great technique, long arms. And then lastly, Rich, I could be wrong here, but NFL GMs are very concerned about character in the top 10. And Tunsil's had some red flags, nothing that would kill him, but he's got some red flags, and Ronnie Stanley doesn't. When you add the whole thing up, if I'm Tom Telesco, that's where I'd go.
Okay, so you go Stanley right there at number 3, and then your number 4 overall pick is something I've been pounding the table for weeks right here, because if you think Ezekiel Elliott has the ability of, say, Le'Veon Bell, if you think he's the next game-changing running back, you go and grab him right now, and that's the way to support Tony Romo in his final years of championship windows being open in Dallas. I love if this happens tonight. I think this would be great for Dallas. Ezekiel Elliott at 4. Mike.
Yep, Rich. I spent a lot of time on this pick, and I really struggled with it because there's an obvious need at defensive end. Matter of fact, both their starters go into next season with 4-game suspensions and some questions about both of them off the field. So you're going into a season picking number 4, and you've got to look at Bosa. You've got to look at Leonard Floyd. You've got to look at some of those guys and say, we really need that position. But for me, Elliott trumped it because they're already set up philosophically to commit to a run game. And we saw it 2 years ago. We saw 449 touches by DeMarco Murray. We saw what that did for that football team. And I agree with you, Rich. It takes the pressure off of 36-year-old Tony Romo.
No doubt. And Witten, too. And it's just, man, suit him up. And that would be incredible to see that. Now, if this breaks the way like this, then Jacksonville is doing cartwheels that Jalen Ramsey's available tonight, right?
Yeah, I think originally a lot of people had Myles Jack penciled in there. And with the medical concerns, I think there's several teams who would love to trade down, but there's no trade partners anymore with the quarterback situation gone at the top end. So, yeah, I think David Caldwell and Gus Bradley are like, are you kidding me? I mean, there is not a corner in the last 5 years that fits what Gus Bradley does more than Jalen Ramsey.
So, and then at 6, you have a trade, which is this. If Tennessee does what you suggest it might do, would be just a coup for them to be able to trade down from 1 to 6 and get the player that we thought they were going to get anyway at 1 if they stayed there in Laramie Tunsil. Mike, should this happen, what do you think the possibility of something like this would happen tonight?
Well, first Tunsil has to get there.
Right.
And Baltimore is known to trade down. They love picks. So I looked at the trade chart, and Tennessee has the 33rd overall pick. And the points necessary to go from 15 to 6 are almost identical with that 33rd pick. And if both teams agreed to that, John Robinson would look like Superman, the new GM at Tennessee, because he'd get the same guy at 6, plus he still has 2 second-round picks and 2 third-round picks as he looks ahead.
Okay, so then that would be 1 through 6. So you have Jack falling all the way to 14 to the Raiders. Is it possible he falls even further based on the medical that you're talking about?
Yes, and I basically I couldn't find a home for him in my mock, and I basically put him there because I feel strongly that he's going to slide. I don't know what Oakland's going to do. I know they have a big donut, a big hole in the middle where he would fit with that dynamic young defense. He's a great fit. It's a great value if they believe in his knee enough. But I'm telling you right now, Rich, and I don't think it's smoke. I've talked to enough people that I trust and respect around the league. There is a ton of concern, short-term and long-term. Long-term is he more than a one-contract guy with that knee? And short-term, bigger issue is, are they going to need another procedure in the next year or two? So obviously the longer he slides, the less risk associated. So I don't know where he's going, Rich, and I plugged him in the middle of the first round, but he could certainly slide beyond that.
Mike Mayock joining me here on the Rich Eisen Show. I know I only have you for a limited time, but I've got to take a quick 60-second break, and then when we come back, I'll just chat with you for a few more minutes, Mike, if that's okay with you. And we'll find out about Paxton Lynch, where you think he's going, and I want to know which team might be trading back into the first round if they covet Connor Cook enough. That's Mike Mayock joining us here on the Rich Eisen Show with the commissioner of the National Football League and Steve Mariucci and Jared Goff all right behind him on this draft day edition from Chicago. Back in just 60 ticks. Welcome back to the Rich Eisen Show. Mike Mayock, my compadre tonight, along with Steve Mariucci, who will be joining us later on this show, and David Shaw, the football coach at Stanford. That'll be part of the NFL Network coverage tonight. Mike Mayock still here on the Rich Eisen Show. Okay, Mike, let's talk about Paxton Lynch. Where do you think he goes tonight?
Well, I put him at 20. It was the simplest thing to do as far as my mock. The New York Jets situation is intriguing because obviously Ryan Fitzpatrick, 34 years old, and there's a poker match going on between the Jets and he right now. They drafted Geno a few years ago. I don't think he's the answer. They drafted Bryce Petty in the 4th round recently. I don't think he's the long-term answer. It's a tough one for Mike McCagnon because the Jets got very good last year. They're legit now. Ryan had a good, solid season. You don't want to take a step back. So I think Paxton Lynch has Joe Flacco-like qualities. He's the same size. He's an elite arm guy. He's a really good athlete, and he's a year away because mentally he's never done any of the stuff. He's never been in a huddle. He's never called a play. He has never called a pass protection. And physically, he's never done a 5-step drop, 5 with a hitch, 7. So basically, he's a year away in my belief. However, if the Jets could draft him at 20 and find a way to bridge 1 year, especially with a Ryan Fitzpatrick, I think it would be a great situation long-term for the Jets. Now, that doesn't mean somebody can't come up ahead and go get him, and that could happen. But I don't see the rumors going around. I talked to several GMs yesterday. The rumor going around is in New Orleans at 12 with 37-year-old Drew Brees. And they drafted a quarterback a year ago in the 3rd round. I don't really believe it, but that's the rumor that's been going around.
That's been the biggest smokescreen of the week, I think, Mike. We talked about that in the first hour of the show, that sitting there, that they really don't have any interest in Paxton Lynch, but they have an interest in trading down out of pick 12 in the worst way. I'm hearing that. What are you hearing from people talking about Kaepernick's availability tonight? What are you hearing about that, Mike?
I'm not really focused in on that at all, Rich. I'm more just because, and it might play into tonight. It might play into what's that?
But nobody's buzzing about it? Nobody's whispering about it?
Nobody said a word to me about it, which doesn't mean a thing. But I think the more interesting thing right now, and you mentioned it heading into break, and if I had to do the mock again, what I probably would have done would be to take Cleveland at 32 and move them up to 29. Arizona is sitting at 29. I think several of the guys they covet will be gone, and they don't have a second-round pick. So I think they'd be very interested in moving back a few, picking up a pick, and allowing Cleveland to come up, who's got an awful lot of poker chips to play with. And I think it'd be an intriguing pick for them to take Connor Cook, who's from that area. They don't have to play him right away. And Connor Cook reminds me kind of a Kirk Cousins, the guy you get 2nd, 3rd, 4th round. He's got enough arm strength to get the job done. He's smart. He's tough. And he could develop into a starting quarterback given some time.
So our poll question today is how many quarterbacks are going to be taken in the first round tonight, 2, 3, or 4? How would you answer that? I know what you mocked, but I just heard that if you remocked Mike Mayock, you might change your response.
Yeah, I mean, my gut tells me that these teams really covet that 5th year. And a lot of fans don't know that if you draft a player in the 1st round, there's a 5th-year option where the rest of the rounds are just 4-year contracts. So a lot of teams for a quarterback covet having that extra 5th-year option. So if somebody came up to get the 4th quarterback, it would not surprise me at all, especially picks 29 through 31.
And I noticed you have your wide receiver, your top 5 wide receivers available. You've got Laquan Treadwell and Corey Coleman 1, 2, and yet you chose somebody else to actually be the first wide receiver off the board. Right, Mike?
Yeah, I felt like, again, we had Baltimore moving down. And I'm sitting there trying to figure out what they're going to do at 15. And I think Doxson fits, A, who they are, and B, as a compliment. Remember, they picked Rashad Perryman a year ago in the 1st round, who never played a snap due to injuries. I think he's a perfect complement. Perryman runs 4.3. Doxson's only a 4.5, but you pair him with Steve Smith, Kamar Aikman. This kid runs routes, and when the ball's in the air, he thinks it's his. And I think Joe Flacco would love Josh Doxson.
Mike, thanks for the time, brother. I'm looking forward to hanging with you all weekend long. You are truly the best at what you do. We take our cues from you. You are the leader for us, so I'm looking forward to it.
I can't wait, Rich. Thanks for having me on.
You got it, brother. I'll see you tonight. That's Mike Mayock.
The Rich Eisen Show, weekdays at noon Eastern on Audience.